Hello there, and welcome back once more to Green Valley Zoo, episode 15. And in this episode, we are putting in the biggest animal in any zoo, the elephant. I thought it was about time that I got round to putting in a large animal. Actually, this is the first time I've put elephants in any of my zoos. And this was one of those habitats which was a lot trickier than I expected. I had an idea, and excuse me, it didn't work, quite frankly. So my thinking was, I wanted, for a start, I wanted it to be a realistic zoo enclosure. I didn't want it to look like a big African safari type thing, which you would get in certain places but not in this zoo. So it would be just a normal enclosure. However, I took my inspiration from a zoo here in England, which is called Colchester Zoo. And what they do there, they have their elephants and all sorts of other big animals like giraffe and zebra, and they don't have them in fenced enclosure. What they do is they have piles of rock and holes in the ground as the barrier. As you can see, I've gone around the edge and I've made a dip that the elephants can't walk down into, and that's what they do at Colchester. So they have the dip, but they also then on the public side of that dip, they then also have a huge pile of rocks. So not only can the animals not get down the dip, but they also can't get over the pile of rocks. And what it means is that you can see the animals without having to look through bars or cages. And I think it's a really nice way of keeping them. It's a lovely enclosure that they have at Colchester Zoo. It's one of my favourite zoos, actually. It's a lovely place. All of their habitats are very modern thinking. You know, they really do the best for the animals and really care about them. So that was my idea. That was the inspiration. But it doesn't work. It didn't look good. I just couldn't get it to be how I wanted it to be. I will try again at some point with a different animal. But you'll see in a minute what I try. And it just wasn't working. So that was a bit of a disaster to start with. This building here, you can see, was also a bit of a pain. It's a very straightforward building, which is exactly what they would have. You know, elephants just need somewhere big, basically. They don't need anything fancy. But I was just trying to give it this second layer of windows, so I did all this, and then a little bit later on I went inside the building and I suddenly realised that these windows are one way, so they're solid concrete on the back, so they don't let any light in. So I do change them for different windows because I did want windows that let the light through. So that was a bit of a pain as well. And I mean, the rest of the building came together quite nicely. I tried to do some work inside later on, which you won't see on the time lapse. Actually, I did that off camera, and again it all went wrong. And I had to redo it, but I'll explain that during the real-time bit at the end. Just what I'm doing here, I wanted a certain amount of realism, and so I wanted to put some sort of door on this large building. They would have some some way of actually closing it off and shutting the elephants in. So I wanted to create these huge sliding doors. So I found obviously what I could use for the door. It was just another wall that's nice and easy. And then I had to sort of make this custom made runners at the top and the bottom for it to slide on. So, you know, pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Just design a shape, copy and paste, and then flip it around and put it at the top and the bottom. And it works really nicely. I think it certainly creates the effect that these huge doors do move. Excuse me, got a bit of a frog in my throat today. So yeah, again, just little touches of realism, nothing too over the top. Didn't like the edge here, so I just expanded it out. I think generally buildings look better when the roof overhangs a bit. I think that happens mostly in real life as well. Don't know whether it is purely aesthetic or if it's functional. I guess it helps the rain not drip down the walls possibly, but I don't know. Anyway, it looks nice, so that's that's what matters to me. So that's why I did it. So yeah, it's hard when you do a building like this, such a big building. It's very hard to make it look good because it can end up looking very boxy and repetitive. And so generally you've got to try and hide some of the building, which I don't really do too much in this. I do add a bit on the back where the facilities buildings are. But actually when the building is for something like elephants, or I suppose giraffe would be the same, then you can kind of get away with them just looking like a big box, because that's exactly what they would be in real life. So from an aesthetics point of view, I think you can get away with it. I do some detailing inside later on, which helps, but obviously from the outside, really, you just stick a few trees and things around it, so just to break up the shape a bit. Oh yeah, my elephants were starting to escape, so I had to pause the game here while I recreated the barrier. So this is where it all started going wrong, because I wanted just obviously the hole is the hole and they can't walk into it, but I wanted something natural looking at the end to connect the building with the dip. I didn't want the dip to go right up to the building, and it didn't quite look right. So I had the idea of doing a natural rock barrier, and then I just tested with these things to make sure the elephants couldn't walk over them. And I thought, brilliant, I can use these pieces here. These are some of my favourite, and I thought, well, they stop the elephants walking over them, so I'll just put a load of them down, which I do here, and it didn't look right. It didn't look like the elephants wouldn't just walk over them. So even though the game mechanics were working, it didn't look like a good enough barrier to me. And as much as I like manipulating game mechanics, I do still want the habitats to look like they could exist in real life. Real problem with this, as soon as I start putting in an extra post, it started making the tops of the wall bendy. Now I know there's an option for that, and I had it turned off, so I'm not sure why that was happening. If anyone can explain that to me, please do in the comments, because it was really annoying me, because I just wanted to have them straight and flat, and as soon as I tried putting in an extra post, it made them go bendy, and it was yeah, very strange. So that was my next idea, was to use extra barriers here, and again, it just didn't look good. And so you'll see there's a bit of a jump in a minute. Here we go. So there I've made an entire fence out of bright red metal girders, and that idea comes from another zoo, which I visit regularly, which is a place called Howlett's Zoo, and they have these red bars for some of their animals, particularly the elephants. So that's what I went with, and I think it works so much nicer. It looks really solid, looks like it could actually contain the elephants inside it. So yeah, really happy with how that turned out. And you will see I've just in the background there, you can see I've put in a little path area where people will actually come in and feed the elephants. I will show you more about that later on. But more of what I'm doing on the screen here is the water. And again, elephants in obviously in the wild, they find natural water holes, but in captivity that doesn't really happen because they're very destructive, very heavy, very wet, and so they end up destroying the edges of any sort of natural water hole. So you'll find that in most enclosures, any animal like this will have some sort of concrete water to get into. Water contained in a concrete basin, swimming pool, call it whatever you want. And so that's what I did over there. Just graded it, sunk it into the ground, and changed the terrain around it. Made sure that the top edges were sloped so the elephants can actually walk down into it. It's basically a swimming pool, and it's exactly what you do find in zoos. So that came out very nicely, and then I had to start some detailing. Nothing that you've not seen before. It's my usual, just filling in gaps with the concrete edges, and I wanted this area to look like it could really exist. I don't know about the rest of the world, but certainly in England there are some zoos where you can feed elephants. In fact, Colchester Zoo is one of them. You can feed the elephants, and in fact I think in Colchester Zoo, I think it's the only zoo in England where you can feed giraffe by hand as well, which I have done. And it is a fantastic experience feeding giraffe by hand. They kind of wrap their tongues around your hand and take the food and try and take your fingers as well. Unintentionally, they didn't end up just, they're just licking you and sort of slobbering all over you. But yeah, it's kind of fun. You can see the elephants enjoying a bit of a swim. They look a little bit funky when they get out of the water, but I don't mind that. That's the pool does its job basically. And this is something else that I see in almost all big animal enclosures in England. They will always have some water sprays, because generally the animals sometimes they love obviously swimming, but they also just enjoy being in the rain. Elephants, they don't care about rain. They'll quite enjoy it. They're quite playful animals actually, elephants. But I had this idea, very simple, but it just kept going wrong. For some reason, even though I had angle snap on, these little rusting posts just wouldn't go at the right angle. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I just kept on manipulating it and doing it in different ways until eventually they were at the right angle. And then when I copied and pasted, they actually stayed in a straight line. So I got them in the end. I don't know, I was probably just being an idiot and doing something slightly wrong. But I figured it out in the end. And this, I have literally seen this exact thing in a zoo before. It's such a simple thing, but the animals do like it. So that was that. Here, just making sure that there's a nice solid surround to the enclosure, because there would be obviously these red girders would all be cemented deep into the ground to make them strong, so they couldn't really just be sitting on grass. I needed them to be sitting on some sort of concrete base. So yeah, again, just sinking roof panels into the ground. It's such a simple thing, but it has such a nice effect, and so that's what I did there. Just put a nice bit of rock around the pool. Again, you wouldn't have grass going right up to the edge because it would just get destroyed by the elephants as they walked on it, and as they came out with wet feet, over time it would just turn to mush. So there would be a bit of rock there. And then I thought obviously you've got to have another barrier between the habitat barrier and the people. So I just thought I'd do a copy and paste job here, just some of my usual little rock formation on the floor, and then a little custom made bit of fencing. and I just copy and paste this all around the outside. It's not 100% lined up and perfect, but I quite like that because it makes it not look generic, like I've copied and pasted. I mean, clearly I have, but some of the posts are a little bit wonky from each other, and that's just makes it a bit more realistic, really. So I don't mind that. Yeah, I mean, it's the quickest and easiest way of doing this sort of thing is just to create a template and then copy and paste. But it is exactly what it would look like in real life. They would just have a continuous design going all the way around the outside of the habitat. And it isn't perfect because in a game like this it can end up looking very repetitive and boring. but I break it up with some of my favourites. My tamarind tree that I sink into the ground with the little red flowers on it. I think you see me doing that in a minute. Obviously just filling in the ends here, just making sure everything connects together. And yeah, I sink the trees down into the ground randomly, just to give it that little bit of randomness, so that it doesn't all look like I've copied and pasted the entire thing. I really do love those trees. I really wish they'd give me those trees as a flower, because it's I think it's the only really nice red flower we've got in the game. I might be wrong there. Oh yes, I use these arrowwood bushes as well. Again, put them in randomly, and it breaks up the monotony of the pattern of the rest of them. And then just little details, just making sure everything fills up to the ends. And yes, I think it's really effective. I really like this technique of using these rocks with things sunk into them like this. It looks so natural. And even here, where you've got a pattern that is fairly repetitive, because it is a bit random, you can get away with it. I think you can anyway. I mean, if you might not think that, you might hate it and think it's terrible, in which case you can let me know and I will go and have a cry in the corner. But hopefully you agree with me and you think it looks okay. So we are just coming to the end of the time lapse here. I will show you briefly a bit of real time. So yes, I will see you in just a minute. Here we are, back with our elephants, and they're pretty happy, I think, in their enclosure. Not too much extra done in here off camera, really. Just a few small details. Obviously I've put some of these lovely trees, acacia I think these are. Oh yes, the umbrella acacia. They're really nice, because they're obviously they're tall enough to provide some shade for the elephants, which they need that. And they don't always want to go inside their house. So I put a few of those around. Just a few little areas here with some shrubs and a few rocks. A couple of logs on the floor. You often see logs in elephant enclosures because they like to pick them up and carry them around. Which is obviously what these enrichment items are for. In fact, you can see one of them doing it right now. He's not going to dump it in the pool, is he? They keep doing that. And I have to keep on fishing it out. It's very annoying. But yeah, there we go. They're having fun. That's what matters. Look at him, grand old thing. Actually, I think that's a her. Oh no, that is my male, a Johnny. He's having a great old time in here. He's got lots of women. So yeah, so this raised area here, obviously, is where the feeding times happen. So I put in a small sign out here: feed the elephants. And when the time is right, you would come up here, and the elephants, you're at perfect head height to feed them. Obviously, I've put the enrichment feeding items nearby to encourage the elephants to actually come over, and it works really well. I think yeah, I'm really pleased with how that all came out, actually. Just a few details in here inside the building. As you can see, I redid the windows. So they actually let some natural light in. I think they look nice. I've coloured them red to match the red railings out here, and then inside I wanted a little area in here, sort of a fenced off area. You would usually see this in an elephant enclosure. There would often be an area like this that they could put an elephant in and close the gates, seal it off from the rest of the herd, whether that's maybe they need to look after it and give it medicine, or if it's acting out. There would always be areas, in fact there would be more than one without a doubt, but I've just put the one in here. The rest of this is just open space for them to come in and wander around as they want. I put a little load of venting along the bottom here, Obviously this area in here would get wet. The elephants would wash in here. They spray the elephants with water, but obviously they go to the toilet a lot and they need a lot of cleaning out, so they'd be hosing down all of this area in here. So I thought it made sense for there to be a drain right across the front here, and these little vents make a perfect drain. So I did that. And then just a little bit of detail around the back. Now I've got to be careful not to show you around the other side of this building, around the far side over there, because I have put something else in there which will be in the next video, so I don't want to ruin that for you now. But as you can see, I've just finished off along here with a few of the information boards, and then very simple around the back here, a few trees, a little bit of realism. I put one in here where it's obviously like the old tree has been cut down and they've had a new one put in its place. I like to try and have little details like that, just adds a bit of whimsy, Obviously covered up the back buildings here, the facility buildings, with just an addition to the main area. Right, that's as far as I'm going to show you to the left there, because that's got to stay hidden for now. So yeah, just really simple pathway, rock edging, trees, simple building there, just a couple little details here, just some crates and carts, like they're obviously storage for just carrying stuff to and fro. So yeah, really really simple little additions there, and yeah, I really like it. It's a very nice enclosure. It's a good size. Oh, excuse me, don't look at that. So yeah, really happy. In fact, this area over here as well that you can see, this is a future project, a few videos down the line. Not too much of a spoiler, but as you can see, I'm preparing something in here. Be a nice surprise in a few videos. But for now, I think I'll just leave you with the elephant. Oh wow, that is going mad. I've noticed these hanging food things do get a little glitchy sometimes when they're being used. They toss around all over the place. But hey, the elephant's enjoying it. He's getting a bit of food out. So hey, what am I to? Who am I to ruin his enjoyment, eh? Okay, right. I'm going to leave you with this lovely pile of elephant poo. It's incredibly realistic, actually. Kudos to the game for making realistic poo. Actually, yeah, let's come around the front, and I will leave you here with this lovely little elephant. So thank you very much for listening and watching. I hope you had fun, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.